I think, in terms of the economy, it's doing not so great. Unemployment numbers are up. We've seen that economic data the last couple of months have been pretty poor. In terms of the sheer numbers of cases, of course, that's another story. China seemed to have been one of the first countries to turn the corner. Cases have been either at zero or single digits the last couple of days, and the political leaders have sounded very confident about the situation moving forward, as long as they sort of nip these signs of a second waves in the bud.
Gerry, here in Australia, there's been a lot of focus on China imposing tariffs on our barley producers after Australia pushed for a probe into the origins of COVID-19. But we're not the only ones, are we, facing China's wrath at the moment? We're seeing some pretty aggressive economic measures being taken and directed at a number of countries right around the world.
Yeah, but the actions that China's taken towards Australia has been really quite stunning. They've really sort of started to turn the screws against Australia at a pretty pivotal moment as the world is trying to move past this pandemic and also look for solutions and sort of get to the bottom of how the whole thing started. As many in Australia know, the Chinese ambassador did essentially threaten economic punishment if Australia were to move ahead, taking a leading role in pushing for this inquiry. And that's exactly what's happened. I think there's no doubt that what we've seen with the Chinese effectively cutting down beef exports, Australian beef imports. China has also slapped 80% tariffs on the barley. Now there's reports coming out that maybe Australian wine might be next to be targeted. I think there is a great deal of frustration and anger in China. They view all of this as Australian essentially doing the bidding of Washington. And I think this entire conversation is being framed in this sort of bipolar, Australia is either with us or they are against us, doing the bidding of the United States. I think that's how China is viewing this entire spat, which means that things could get pretty nasty, I think, for Australia. That seems to be caught in the middle of all of this.
Yeah, complex challenge for the Australian government, no doubt about that. What is the situation there now in Seoul where you are, Gerry? How is the curve looking there? Of course, South Korea's been one of the nations held up as being the gold standard in terms of coronavirus management, but we have seen some outbreaks on the club scene, I understand.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, Seoul did a tremendous job basically by really rolling out very aggressive testing, very aggressive contact tracing. Of course, there was an outbreak about 2 weeks ago, and the local authorities have had some difficulty in essentially tracking all of the people that have been that came into contact with some of the infected people who were visiting these very busy nightclubs, because some of the other guests weren't using their real names, which has made the sort of the surveillance effort a bit more tricky. A couple of days ago, we heard that at one of Samsung's major hospitals in the country, a very highly rated public institution, there were a couple of dozen nurses who were also infected. So it all just goes to show that no matter how good countries, including Australia, may be doing with their containment efforts for the first wave, it could come back at any time. And so, South Korea as a country right now is quite on guard. But I would say that if you were to walk out onto the streets, other than a few streets in the Itaewon nightlife area, the scenes on the streets are pretty normal. It's very relaxed. People still wear masks, but, businesses seem to be actually relatively thriving.